The mirror room. My aunt left me her house when she passed away. It was more like a cottage, really, old, creaky, and covered in ivy. But there was one room she never let anyone enter. The mirror room. She called it that because it had no windows and only one thing inside, a full-length mirror bolted to the far wall. The day I moved in, I opened that room out of curiosity. The mirror was strange, old, a little foggy, but what creeped me out was the reflection. It wasn't quite right. No matter where I stood, there was a half-second delay between my movement and the reflection. Like the mirror was watching me, thinking. That night, I dreamed of my aunt standing in front of it, her hand pressed against the glass, whispering something I couldn't hear. The next night, I stood in front of the mirror again. I raised my hand. The reflection didn't. It just stared. Then, it smiled. I ran out and slammed the door shut. But now, sometimes when I pass the hallway, I see someone standing inside the mirror room. Someone who looks just like me, only wrong. I tried to ignore it, locked the door, covered the keyhole. But every night, something changed. One morning, I woke up and the door was wide open. Inside, the mirror looked different, brighter, almost inviting. I called a locksmith to take it out. He laughed, until he tried to unbolt it. "I don't get it," he muttered. "It's not bolted to the wall, it's part of it." He knocked on the mirror. It echoed, hollow, like a tunnel. That night, I recorded it, just to prove to myself I wasn't going crazy. 3:07 a.m. The footage showed the mirror flickering, like static on an old TV. And then, I walked into the room, but I never left. Only thing is, I was asleep in bed the whole time. The next morning, there was a handprint on the mirror. From the inside, I stopped sleeping. I couldn't trust what I'd see when I woke up. Sometimes, I'd catch a glimpse of myself in other mirrors, but my reflection wouldn't move. It would just stare. I covered every mirror in the house, except that one, the one in the room. I knew I had to destroy it. So I took a hammer and stood in front of it one last time. My reflection was already smiling. "You're late," it whispered. I swung. The glass didn't shatter. Instead, it rippled, like water, and pulled me in. The cold hit me instantly. The air inside the mirror was thick, muffled, like being underwater. Everything looked the same. The room, the door, even me. Except, I was no longer in control. I turned toward the mirror from the inside and watched as my reflection, now fully alive, turned and walked away. She left the room. She left me behind. I screamed. I banged on the glass. But no sound passed through. Now I sit here, day after day, watching her live my life. She smiles more now, laughs in photos, has friends over. But at night, she comes back. She stands in front of the mirror, leans in close, and whispers, "Stay quiet. They still think I'm you."
Stone Eyes. A little girl had a terrifying dream. She dreamed that her mother and father had died. They were being buried in a single coffin by people whose eyes were made of black stones. And when the coffin was lowered into the grave, the people began to take the stones out of their eyes and throw them into the pit. But there weren't enough stones. Then they turned to the girl and said she must give them her stones. "I don't have any stones," said the girl. The people grabbed her and took out her eyes. And they really were stones. The girl could still see it all, even though now she had only empty holes where her eyes had been. She woke up crying and couldn't calm down, even though her mother and father were alive and told her it had only been a bad dream. Her mother called the grandmother. The grandmother came over right away and brought 2 small round white stones. She gave them to the girl. "Hide them under your pillow," said the grandmother. "And if the people with stone eyes ever come into your dreams again, give them these white stones instead of your own. Then they'll forget about you." The girl hid the stones under her pillow. The people with the stone eyes never came back into her dreams. But she still didn't remove the stones, even though they made it harder to sleep. A year later, the grandmother died. The girl cried for a long time. She loved her dearly. The next day, they laid her grandmother in a coffin and took her to the cemetery. The girl went too. But when they arrived, she couldn't find her mother or father anywhere. No one around her had seen them either. The coffin was carried to the grave and lowered into the ground. The girl looked around at the people but didn't recognize anyone. She was surrounded by strangers. Only now did she notice that all of them had stone eyes. Everything repeated, just like in the dream. The people pulled the stones from their eyes and threw them into the grave. And again, there weren't enough. They turned to the girl, staring with their empty eye sockets. "Give us your eyes," they said, "so we can bury your grandmother properly." The girl was terrified and began to cry. "Don't be afraid," they said. "Your grandmother will come back to us. She will live in the strange, dark dreams of others. And one day, your time will come too. Didn't your grandmother ever tell you?" Then the girl remembered what her grandmother had said. She realized she was dreaming. She reached under her pillow to take out the white stones her grandmother had given her. But under the pillow, there was nothing. Her mother had cleaned her room recently, found the stones, and thrown them away. When her parents returned home from the funeral, they found the girl lying lifeless on her bed. And where her eyes had once been, there were only black holes. Sometimes what feels like just a nightmare is actually a warning. But what do you do when you wake up and it's already too late?